What's up, everybody? It's Jordan, and welcome to the Sports Student Hine Show. Today is August 27th, 2021. And on today's video, I'm joined by Tony Gazza. How you doing today, Tony?
Doing good. How about yourself?
Doing really good. Really glad you were able to join the show today. And, today's show is a little bit different. I actually did one yesterday doing an NFC East divisional preview. Today is the NFC North divisional preview. The NFC North consists of the Lions, Packers, Vikings, and Bears. You're actually a big Packers fan yourself. So can you kind of talk about, before we get started, how you became a Packers fan and everything?
Yeah, so I have family that lives on the borderline of Wisconsin. It's Iron Mountain, Michigan. And, ever since, they became Packer fans, it's been in my bloodline. So since I was born basically into the Packer Nation, and ever since I've been a fan. So, for me, I try to keep it, in the family tree and, show homage to that. But yeah, I never think about switching up. Even when Aaron Rodgers departs, I think I'm still going to be a Packer fan for life.
And it's really, really cool. And you mentioned Rodgers. We'll definitely get into that later. Kind of talking about, the better teams in the NFC North later. So kind of start off here. We'll start off with the, I would say for the most part, everybody thinks they're going to be last in their division. That is the Detroit Lions. So what are your kind of thoughts on some of these departures and additions for the Lions this season?
Yeah, it's definitely a big shift from their keystone, franchise players like Stafford and Jones. You look at it and you see Matt Stafford as the face of the franchise, and now that he's gone, it's going to be interesting on how they integrate Jared Goff. I definitely don't fear him as much as I do Matthew Stafford. I definitely think that Matthew Stafford is the more talented quarterback out of the two. He has better arm strength, and I think he can read the field better than Goff. I think Goff has a hard time processing his reads. I definitely don't fear him as much as Stafford. So, I definitely think that the Lions got worse, believe it or not. Yeah, you did add Brockers, and, I love their new coach, but, how much of the Matt Patricia regime was at fault, or is it just the Detroit Lions culture? I just think that the Detroit Lions are a plague team, and I don't see them getting much better this year.
And I really completely agree. You look at Stafford, and you put Stafford on Steelers, Cowboys, or but I really feel that if you add a Super Bowl ring to Stafford, he has a legitimate case to be a future Hall of Famer. And you look at Galladay; he's been one of the most underrated wide receivers for the past couple of years. I was really hoping the Bengals would end up getting him, but obviously it did not happen. Ended up going to the Giants. Marvin Jones, he was a solid number 2. Ended up going to the Jacksonville Jaguars. And, you look at Penei Sewell. Penei Sewell getting him, in the first round. Lots of people maybe did not want Penei Sewell. Maybe they wanted a wide receiver because they don't really have a top wide receiver, in my opinion. But all of a sudden, you look at their offensive line. They have some really, really nice guys. Like Frank Ragnow, Penei Sewell, some young guys. And you can honestly make a legitimate case that the Lions have a top 10 offensive line in the NFL right now. And they brought in Brockers from the LA Rams to really beef up the defensive tackle position. They doubled down on defensive tackle in the second and third rounds of the draft, getting Lee McNeil and Washington defensive tackle. And then you look at Goff. Goff, to me, I feel like I know he's not nearly as good as Matthew Stafford, and he even struggled in Sean McVay's offense. It's very interesting with Goff because I feel like good because he doesn't really have the talents and the offensive guru around him like he did in LA. Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods, in my opinion, you really look at it, they're one of the most underrated wide receiver duos in the NFL. You had Todd Gurley, you had Cam Akers and some other guys. Really have this, top huge guy or anything like that. But to me, I'm really interested, in their coach and Campbell. I feel like he has potential to be really good. But this year so far for the Lions, I'm not really expecting much. I know you look at some of their additions, these draft picks that they got, like those defense tackles I mentioned. Those are some nice additions. But to say they're key additions, I wouldn't say that. And, they had some decent signings. But you just look at their departures. I mean, Matthew Stafford, Galladay, and Marvin Jones, that really overweighs the additions, in my opinion. And I would be shocked if the Lions are not last in the NFC North, especially because this team is just really interesting because it seems like it's more of a defensive-minded team, with Campbell coming in, and then you have Goff, who's been, with an offensive-minded coach. You have DeAndre Swift, who has potential to be really good with a top 10 offensive line, but you have no wide receivers basically. So it's really interesting in Detroit, but I would say for the most part, I want to see them being last in the NFC North.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Unless they have a miracle season, but I don't expect that to happen.
So, next up on the NFC North, this is a very, very interesting team. You look at the, Chicago Bears, they have Justin Fields, they have Andy Dalton, and it seems like everybody completely forgets that they also had Super Bowl winning quarterback Nick Foles as well. And you look at the Bears, and you look at their departures from last season. Let's see here. Oh, crap. This is not. Okay, now it's loading. So they had Mitchell Trubisky. I know he wasn't really good, but that's a key departure because you're losing your starting quarterback. You also bring in Justin Fields. He was a first-round pick. They traded up to get him with the New York Giants in their first round of the draft. And, I wasn't really high on Fields, but I feel like this is fantastic for Chicago because, in my opinion, you really look at it, Fields can learn so much from Andy Dalton. I know Andy Dalton, I would say he's about average, but he's been in the league for a decade. Fields could really learn a lot from Andy Dalton and Nick Foles. I feel like, Dalton, let's say if he brings, starts a couple games, but if mainly he's going to mentor Justin Fields. And I really like that signing by Dalton. They signed him before they ended up drafting Justin Fields. And, something I thought was very, very interesting was that Chicago talked to Andy Dalton and told them that they were going to draft Justin Fields before Andy Dalton even went to camp, before he even had a practice, before he even played a game for the Chicago Bears. And that's something we did not hear about with Aaron Rodgers and the Jordan Love situation, which I just find that really interesting, that of all the people, Andy Dalton would hear about Justin Fields going to the Bears before he's even, playing for them. And then you look at Tevin Jenkins, an offense tackle from Oklahoma State. I was kind of surprised he fell out of the first round, in my opinion. That's a really, really nice, help on the offensive line. And they also brought in, I don't have him on here, but they recently signed Jason Peters, a really nice, tackle who's been in the league for quite some time. Their tackle position with Peters and Tevin Jenkins is really nice. But, you look at Allen Robinson, he was franchise tag, but he's only on a one-year deal. They have, Mooney, who lots of people are high on him. They have a nice running back duo between Tariq Cohen and Montgomery. But this is kind of a similar situation with the Lions. I don't expect the Bears to be that good this year. Their defense really carried them last season. They were 8-8. You take away the defense, they probably would have won 4 games at the most, in my opinion. But, they still have Khalil Mack. They still have some nice guys on defense. But, with Justin Fields, and depending what week he starts, I don't really think he should start week 1. I think he should start maybe week 3 or 4 because I don't think he should just be, get let in right away. Because, they play the Rams week 1. I don't think that would be a smart idea. Let's say they get humiliated. You're already losing his confidence and stuff like that. But the Bears, to me, are very interesting. And I'm very intrigued by Justin Fields because I wasn't really high on him. And so far, he's performed pretty nice in the preseason. But the Bears, I don't expect them to be, in playoff contention. But they are a very, very intriguing team this upcoming year.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you that they're interesting, but I'm not afraid of the Chicago Bears. Here's why. Because they've had the last 3 years to put their money where their mouth is, and they haven't. with that defense. And, now they think a rookie quarterback is going to come in and be the savior of the day. Fortunately, it doesn't work that way. He's still very green. He's new. And obviously, he said that the game is slow for him or fast for him, whatever way he said. But, he is going to be adjusted to the NFL game real fast because he just got licked on national TV by a defensive back or a defensive linebacker and took his helmet off and headband off. So, it's going to be a learning curve for Justin Fields. I don't think he's ready to take the reins. Obviously, you have a veteran in not only Andy Dalton, but Nick Foles as well. So I don't know why you would just throw someone into the fire like that. I think the sit and, learn method works better than just tossing him on the field. But, with Jason Peters and Jenkins, yes, they're great additions, but can Jason Peters stay on the field? He's aging and he's had a track record of being injured. So, if you have him on paper, that's great. But how are they going to execute on the field? At the end of the day, it's a different season once you hit week 8, because the same team you start off with week 1 is not going to be who you enter with leading the brigade, into week 8 or even deeper into the playoffs. Injuries happen, cuts, trades. So you never know what team you're going to be with by the end of the season. But, I think obviously it's a huge upgrade. Trubisky's a bust, and I don't see much potential in him. I think he's an accident waiting to happen. But, Justin Fields is not going to come in there and take the Bears to the NFC Championship or let alone even win the NFC North. So I think people are blowing smoke and mirrors, but they're interesting. I'm definitely going to watch, but there's nothing to wet your knickers about. It's probably at best a 4-win, 5-win team.
I completely agree with what you said. You don't know what team you're going to be facing. You look at the Bears. That's a perfect example. A week 1 game against the Rams, if Andy Dalton starts, could be a completely different Bears team by the time the Bears play, even week 4 or 5. Because you're playing against Andy Dalton, who his tendencies, how he performs, and then you have Justin Fields, who we haven't really seen a whole ton of tape of, in the NFL game. So it's going to be hard to play against him. But I feel like with the Bears, it's kind of like the overreaction with the preseason. That's the one thing I hate about preseason the most. It's always, there's overreactions everywhere. And I feel that Justin Fields, so far, he's impressed me a little bit. But this is the preseason. He's playing against undrafted free agents from like Division 2 schools and places like that. But I feel like with Fields, he has potential to be good, but I don't really feel like he has the weapons to be around him to be good right now. The Bears, in my opinion, I don't see them even being remotely close to even being 500 this year. They have a quarterback situation like they have for years, and it's crazy. You look at Andy Dalton. He's pretty much been average for the majority of his career. But if he played for the Chicago Bears throughout his whole career, he would lead the Bears in pretty much every passing record there is, which is just really crazy, and goes to show not only the Bears have had quarterback situations for the past couple years, but they've really had not that stable quarterback for really their whole franchise for the most part, and it's really, really crazy with Chicago. I do not expect them to be good this season, but I'm really intrigued by Fields to when he will start, but I just do not feel like week 1 should be it because they have Andy Dalton for a reason. They're going to have him take a hard part of their schedule, and then they're going to have Justin Fields play. And that kind of goes to the next team here, the third team in the NFC North. And one of my favorite teams heading into the season, you look at surprise teams. I've done, some mega predictions for each NFL team. I've posted some different stuff. My 2 surprise teams for this upcoming year, in no particular order, it's the Panthers and it's the Vikings. I cannot wait to watch the Vikings this season. You look at the departures. The only really person they lost was Riley Reef, the right tackle. They lost him to the Bengals on a 1-year deal, but they replaced him and Christian Darrisaw. And a really nice offense tackle. I was surprised they were able to get him in the first round. They brought back Mackenzie Alexander, who was with Cincinnati last season. And Mackenzie Alexander is quietly one of the best slot corners in the NFL right now. They brought in Patrick Peterson. They lost Trey Waynes also to the Bengals a year or so ago in free agency. Patrick Peterson, it's really weird because he's been with the Arizona Cardinals his whole career. And going to a team like Minnesota, you just don't really expect some of those players to go on to different teams. But they also had, they drafted White Davis to guard from Ohio State. They drafted Patrick Jones, one of my favorite players in the draft, an edge from Pittsburgh. Chaz Surratt, the linebacker from North Carolina University. They even drafted possibly Kirk Cousins' replacement and Kellen Mond from A&M. And you really look at it, the Vikings last season, if they had a normal or just average Mike Zimmer defense, in my opinion, they 100% would have been in the playoffs last year. Kirk Cousins, I know he's very inconsistent, and people can compare him to Andy Dalton because there's times where he has the talent around him, but it's more so he's a game manager at times rather than he's elevating the talent around him. But you look at Cousins, he was extremely underrated last year. Over 4,200 passing yards, over 30 passing touchdowns. Dalvin Cook had nearly 140 total scrimmage yards a game last year. Statistically wise, Justin Jefferson was the best rookie receiver we've ever seen. Adam Thielen had over 10 touchdowns. I think Irv Smith Jr. is bound to have a breakout season. And you just look at the Vikings. I mean, they had a terrific offseason. And, they really filled the holes on their team that they really needed upgrades the most. And, if they complete what they did last year in offense, I feel like this defense is going to be much improved. I wouldn't be surprised if this Vikings team had around, 10 wins or something like that. Because, obviously the Vikings, the only really good team in the NFC North aside from the Vikings, in my opinion, obviously is the Packers. That's going to be their biggest threat. Wouldn't be surprised if the Vikings get 3, maybe 4, easy wins against the Lions and the Bears. But the Vikings, to me, you just look at all around their pieces. And they were really good last year. And if they just had a normal defense, they would have been so good. I think their defense is going to really surprise people this year. And if Kirk Cousins can have the success he had last year, I wouldn't be surprised if Minnesota had around 10 wins or so, or maybe even ended up winning the NFC North.
Yeah, and I could definitely see the perspective of people saying that the Vikings can knock off the Packers, but I highly doubt it. Here's why: because Aaron Rodgers is on a mission this year. This is the last dance, and although the Vikings have key additions of obviously Darrisaw, Alexander, and Peterson, I don't think that's enough to tip the scales. And I'm not afraid of Kirk Cousins either. Although he had a nice season on paper, he is an accident waiting to happen also. He's one mistake away from blowing the game. And, I'll take my chances against Kirk Cousins any day. I believe that, they are the biggest threat to the Packers, but I don't believe that they can execute. They don't have what it takes to dethrone the Packers. And, obviously you can't hold it against Mike Zimmer last year. It was an off year. He's obviously going to come into this year with a loaded defense. And he is Aaron Rodgers' kryptonite. I will give him that. Mike Zimmer is really the only person that's presented a challenge to Aaron Rodgers, and he's able to disguise coverage really good and, even sometimes get Aaron Rodgers on a few of them. But at the end of the day, with home field advantage, I think Green Bay takes it easy. But Aaron Rodgers is the best quarterback in the league, next to Patrick Mahomes and I believe Tom Brady behind Aaron Rodgers. But I just don't understand where people are putting the money. I see a lot of bets on the sports book for Minnesota. Not wise. I definitely think Green Bay is the king of the North until otherwise said. But I think there could be 8 to 9 win team. I had maybe 9-8, I think Minnesota has the potential to, like you said, snag those games against the Bears and Lions, maybe 3 or 4 of them. But outside of that, 8 to 9 win team, maybe wild card in the playoffs, and yeah, I think that's as far as they go. I don't think they even get outside of the North.
It's really interesting. And, I brought up Cousins, having over 4,000 passing yards last season. And I feel like, last year he was pretty underrated. But you also kind of look at the side. I'm not trying to debate against myself, but you also kind of look at, Kirk Cousins, in primetime. Everybody talks about Andy Dalton, how horrible he is in primetime. When Kirk Cousins, I believe he actually has a worse record than Andy Dalton. And that really, really says something. But you look at Cousins, and, there are times where he can win you games. But you really look at Cousins, more often than not, he's more than likely going to lose you a game than he's going to win you a game. With the talent that Minnesota has in offense or defense, I don't feel like Cousins might not have to throw for like 4,500 yards or, something like that, close to 40 touchdowns for him to, be great in Minnesota. I feel like, they have some talent around him, on offense. Guys like Dalvin Cook, who's one of the more underrated running backs in the league, Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, who's really, really underrated. They have the talent around him where if he can play turnover-free football and just consistent, maybe a little, game manager / to being a good quarterback, he's not going to have to, have those flashy stats. He just plays smart and turnover-free football. I feel like Cousins can really, help Minnesota this season. But it is really interesting, with Minnesota drafting their possible future replacements. And Cousins with Kellen Mond, in the third round from A&M to possibly replace Cousins, depending on how he performs this season. But I cannot wait to see Minnesota this season. I think they're going to be fun to watch. Definitely on my surprise team list. And it kind of goes to our last team here, in the NFC North. Most people would have them as their favorites. They've been an NFC Championship game for the past 2 seasons. That's the Green Bay Packers. So can you go ahead and talk about your favorite team and the Packers?
Absolutely. So I'm still not happy with the departure of Corey Linsley. I think we definitely should have retained him at all costs. Now you give Aaron Rodgers a rookie center to enter the season. Now, obviously, it was huge bringing back Randall Cobb. Obviously, I think he's one of those guys that Rodgers never wanted to see leave the locker room. He felt that Cobb was a keystone player in that franchise, a cornerstone player, I should say. Now, with the addition of Amari Rogers, I love him in the slot. He's a great young talent, but I just don't see him coming in and being one of Aaron Rodgers' favorite targets. Obviously, he's built that trust with Devontae Adams, even Allen Lazard, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, and you have Randall Cobb returning. So obviously it's going to be tough to get touches out there. Obviously we got Big Bob Tonyan. I love Tonyan. He's one of my favorites. I was rooting for him even when he was on the practice squad, and people were like, "Oh, he's going to get cut, can't make it," and he produced over double digits touchdowns. So I love Big Bob, but you look at it. Aaron Rodgers seems to be happy. I definitely expected him to be disgruntled coming back to the team. But, it seems like he's in it for the last dance, and, he's a generational talent. So, whenever you don't win a Super Bowl or, you don't even make the Super Bowl, of course it's going to hurt. And it hurt him for the past, 5 NFC Championship games. So I think this year they're going to come in with a chip on their shoulder. They definitely have a vendetta against some teams, and they're going to go out there, take care of business. And I think that they can win 14 games this year, going 14-3 with that additional game added on. But, I think it's Super Bowl or bust this year for Aaron Rodgers. Point blank, period. If he does not reach the Super Bowl, it is going to be a failure of the season. Even if he goes to the NFC Championship and loses, that's a failure. We're not here to lose in another NFC Championship. Aaron Rodgers can't afford to go 1-6 in NFC Championship games. He cannot do it. He has to improve that record to 2-5 at best. And, even if you go to the Super Bowl and you lose, it's a failure because now you're going to be 1-1 in Super Bowl rings, and that's not going to look good. Yeah, first ballot Hall of Famer, but I think if he wins a second Super Bowl, he will go down as the greatest Green Bay Packer quarterback of all time, surpassing Brett Favre. Obviously, Favre 1-1 in Super Bowl, so. I'm rooting for Aaron this year. I mean, he's my guy. I've grown up in the Aaron Rodgers era, and to see that come to an end pretty soon, it's pretty shocking. But all good things must come to an end. I would have liked to see the Packers maybe go out and get Clay Matthews for a last dance, or even bring Jordy Nelson out of retirement, or one of those guys that was the face of that Green Bay Packer team back in 2010. But, obviously Jordy Nelson is happy where he is in life. And obviously the Packers had no discussions of bringing back Clay Matthews, which is kind of disheartening. But, it's a business, and I understand that. But, I think the Packers offense is going to be lethal this year. I mean, look at the amount of weapons Rodgers has. I mean, I don't think he's had this many weapons since possibly that Super Bowl run. I mean, when they had Jordy Nelson, Jermichael Finley, James Jones, Greg Jennings. I mean, now you look at it. I mean, you got Devontae Adams, Randall Cobb, Alan Lazard, Big Bob Tonyan, who's a great red zone threat. You got Rodgers in the slot, Marquez Valdez-Scantling. I mean, they're stacked. And not to mention Aaron Jones, who's, in my opinion, top 5 back in the league. I mean, it was key to re-sign him, but I don't think it was necessary to give him that big of a deal. 4 years and, however X amount of dollars you gave Aaron Jones. I think we could have used that to, maintain Corey Linsley or, another piece that we let go. But I think overall the offensive line is good. You're getting David Bakhtiari, one of the best, if not the best tackles in the league. And, obviously it's going to be a question mark with the rookie center. But I'm confident in our guards. Jenkins is great. And overall, I'm pumped for the season. I've been watching the preseason here and there. I don't get too glued into it. It doesn't really, have any effect into the, season. But, I think Jordan Love, he's proved himself. I don't think that he's our guy. I really don't. I just don't see it, The eye test proves it all. And, of course he can make, average slant throws or check downs or, crossing routes, but he's just not one of those guys that really excites me and says, oh, well, he's going to be our franchise quarterback for the next 10 years. I just don't see it with Jordan Love. I genuinely don't know why we traded up to get Jordan Love. I don't know. I always say it. I would have been better off with Jalen Hurts. I like him more than Jordan Love because I think Jalen Hurts is just an overall better talent. But maybe I'm wrong. I'm not a scout, so maybe they see something different, But I want to hand it over to you, Jordan.
Yeah, that's very, very interesting. You mentioned, you prefer, Jalen Hurts over Jordan Love. But you mentioned something with Rodgers to me. If he would win a Super Bowl, he would be the best quarterback in Packers history. I don't think he has to win a Super Bowl. He could be in a Super Bowl and play horrible. He could throw 5 interceptions if he goes to the Super Bowl. In my opinion, he's still going to be the best quarterback in Packers history easily. You look at Rodgers, he's a top 5 quarterback of all time. And I know the Super Bowls and, and the NFC Championship game losses, that really hurts his resume, as the best quarterback, of all time, conversation and stuff like that. But he's one of the best talented quarterbacks we've ever seen. Everybody says, Tom Brady is the best quarterback we've ever seen. Oh, best quarterback of all time. Aaron Rodgers, I would say the most talented quarterback we've ever seen. I think that's certainly a debatable topic because you look at Rodgers. I mean, he's just arm strength and his accuracy and just crazy plays, and crucial moments throughout the games. But, kind of looking at some of these additions here, they bring back Randall Cobb. He was a big part of the Packers' success. for nearly a decade or so with Rogers, everything, and I think that's a nice pickup and everything. Giving somebody who Rogers has familiarity with, because I really think that's crucial. Because if you have somebody who you've not really played with before, but you bring back somebody who you've played with before a couple years ago, who you really had much success with, I think that's really nice, really beneficial to the Packers offense. You bring in Amari Rogers, the draft pick from Clemson University. Thought that was a pretty good draft pick, giving Rogers some more weapons at wide receiver. I think that's really good for him. And, I know it was in the third round, and some people will complain they should have took a wide receiver earlier. I agree to some extent to that, but I don't know. I really feel like you had to really draft Josh Myers when you could in the second round, because getting the center from Ohio State and Josh Myers, that's a key addition, and I'm very interested in that with Josh Myers, because Corey Linsley, that was honestly, in my opinion, one of the worst decisions for any team in the offseason. And the best decision, in my opinion, without a doubt, the best free agency signing in the NFL in this offseason was Corey Linsley signing with the Chargers. The Chargers had the worst offensive line in the Bengals last season. It was rated last to PFF. They were horrible, and they signed Linsley to a very worthy contract. Not only was Corey Linsley the best center in the league last season, you can make a debatable case. Not only was he the best center, he was one of the arguably a top 3 offensive lineman last year. Like, he was clearing away the best center. His PFF grades were off the charts. He was phenomenal. And the center and quarterback connection is very, very interesting. That's very crucial. You're having a guy you played with for quite some time, and then you're going to bring in this rookie who, let's be honest, really shouldn't be on the team, because Corey Linsley should still be in the Packers right now. And them signing Aaron Jones, to me, and not retaining Corey Linsley is very interesting, because Aaron Jones, he's obviously a top 10 running back, but running back is the easiest position to replace in the NFL. And Corey Linsley, to me, that is a major horrible decision for the Green Bay Packers, and not retaining him. In my opinion, with everything going on with the Packers in this offseason, I would say that is the worst mistake they've made. They tried to give Rogers some more weapons, and Cobb and Rogers, Amari Rogers and stuff like that, but not retaining Corey Linsley, to me, when, Rogers is frustrated and you let go the best center who in the league last season, don't give him a reason to complain in certain situations like that. But aside from losing Corey Linsley, which is a major, major downfall of the Packers offensive line, I think this Packers team has potential to end up winning the division again. I can see them winning anywhere to 10 to about 13 games this season. But you mentioned Jordan Love, towards the end of what you were saying. I just still to this day do not get that. When it happened to me, I thought it was obvious it was going to be Patrick Queen, because they lost Blake Martinez in the offseason to the New York Giants. Made so much sense. And then, in my opinion, Jordan Love was not even a top 5 quarterback prospect. I've said it before on the show. Tyree Jackson, he was a quarterback prospect a couple years ago from Buffalo. He's one of the best quarterback prospects I have ever seen. He ended up going undrafted, and now currently he's a tight end for the Eagles. And it's very interesting, because you look at Tyree Jackson and you look at Jordan Love. You look at their style of play, their size, and just everything. They are very, very, very comparable, the two. But Jordan Love is supposed to be this, basically savior of the Green Bay Packers once Aaron Rodgers goes off. I still to this day do not get it. It makes no sense. Of all the quarterbacks to get in the past couple of years of the draft, I don't get why him, because I can name just 7 or 8 quarterbacks on the top of my head just in the first round the past 2 years that I'd rather have than Jordan Love. I know, it's going to be talked about for years, especially once Aaron Rodgers eventually leaves Green Bay. But that, to me, will definitely be one of the worst questionable decisions I would possibly in recent draft memory.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I'm still puzzled by it. I'm sure Aaron Rodgers is still puzzled by it. But, you have to live and learn with it. And, I think the Packers learned their lesson. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers held out for the extended amount of time he did. And I think that really opened their eyes. Obviously, a lot of criticism towards Mark Murphy and Brian Gutekunst, but I think that overall they have their best interest for the Packers as a team, not just as individual. But I wish that Aaron Rodgers goes out there like he did the year prior and sticks it to him and says, "Watch this." And he's coming off his best season. 48 touchdowns, 5 picks, 4,200, and I believe 99 passing yards with a quarterback percentage of it's in the hundreds. It has to be. It's a quarterback rating. It was like 110 or 120. It's ridiculous. We haven't seen a quarterback put up those stats in a minute. So just for Aaron Rodgers to come back, have a revenge tour, win MVP, that's impressive in it of itself. But I think Aaron Rodgers needs to come out there and win a Super Bowl. At the end of the day, it's Super Bowl or bust. And if they don't win the Super Bowl, it's going to be a failure. And at the end of the day, I don't know if it's Matt LaFleur, because it's strange. Aaron Rodgers has had more 40-point plus games than he has had with Matt LaFleur than Mike McCarthy. So, I believe the system's better, but can they execute? Can they win the big game? That's the question. I would like to see them pull it off and, bring back the title to Titletown. But, only time will tell. So I'm waiting for the season to start. Once it does, then I'm all in for, the last dance. And hopefully it's not the last dance. I really would like to see Aaron Rodgers maybe change his mind, and maybe the walk into Lambeau really, shows him how special it is to be a Green Bay Packer for life. And maybe, it doesn't have to be that way. He doesn't have to follow in the footsteps of, Joe Montana or even Peyton Manning, even Tom Brady leaving their team. I'm sure that Tom Brady would have loved to be a New England Patriot for life, but it didn't work out that way. So hopefully, we can, convince Aaron to stay longer. I think that is what we need to do this season. If not, then it is what it is. But I really just hope that even if we give Aaron Rodgers power or input, like getting Randall Cobb back, like, hey, we'll give you input, just, please stay. At this point, we're at his mercy. So I just hope that we can just say, hey, Aaron, please, please, please give us another chance. It's kind of like, you're begging your ex to take you back. That's what we're at this point. We're begging Aaron Rodgers to take us back. So hopefully we can. Hopefully he takes us back.
And it's really interesting, with the Packers and everything. There's just so many storylines heading into the season, with Rodgers, with Lindsley gone, with Jordan Love. When will he ever start? So kind of talking. We've talked about departures and additions for each NFC North team, but our kind of predictions for each each team in the NFC North. Looking at it, it's a lot different. Compared to each other's. Let's see here. Mine, I have the Lions going 3-14. We kind of talked about the Lions going to be last in the division. No surprise there. And but I feel like the Lions do have potential. Give them a year or two. They have a nice offensive line that I kind of mentioned earlier. But I feel like once they find their quarterback of the future, then that might be pretty decent. The Bears, I don't see them winning many games. Maybe 4, maybe 5 wins. Really just depends when Justin Fields will start and how he will perform, because really I don't see Justin Fields being this great quarterback prospect right away. I don't really get why people would. I know he's played good, but I think it's a little bit overreaction. I have the Packers going 10-7. I know that's low, but I feel like the Packers, to me, it's just going to be very hard for Rodgers to duplicate what he did last season. He had a historic season. He's one of the best quarterbacks of all time. like I was saying, arguably the most talented quarterback we've ever seen. But for him to have pretty much comparable, numbers and everything compared to last season, that's not going to be easy to do. I know he has Amari Rogers now, brings back Cobb, he's familiar with, but it's going to be hard for him to do that. The one thing I will say about Rogers, though, is compared to every other quarterback in this division, he's the only one who can really, elevate talents. You look at Robert Tonyan, not many people really knew who he was heading into the season. He's made him to some, superstar tight end who had over 10 receiving touchdowns this past season. But the Vikings, I know I talked about it. I'm just really high on them. I think they can win maybe 10, 11 games, but I think their floor for them is about 7 or 8. My main issue with the Vikings is just Kirk Cousins' consistency. They have all the pieces, and they have a much improved defense, like I mentioned earlier. If they had a normal defense, they would have been in the playoffs last year. But my main thing is for the Vikings is just consistency from the quarterback play. Obviously, I'm not worried about that with the Packers. I just feel like the Packers, they're going to be good. I would not be surprised at all if the Packers ended up winning the division. Like, I would not be surprised at all one bit. I was trying to do a different ranking because I feel like the Vikings and the Packers are slightly more comparable than people think. The Packers, I wouldn't be surprised if they had, 11, 12 wins or something like that. But I feel like there might be games where, people are able to kind of contain Rodgers. Because if you can contain Rodgers, for the most part of your Green Bay, you've more than likely lost. And I feel like you also going to look at the, one possession games the past couple of years. The 2019 season, they had, I believe, I can't remember how many one possession games. If you would have split those in half, they would not have been nearly as good. And that's the one fortunate thing. They had a consistent quarterback play, because when you have the best quarterback in the league, you're going to win, games more often. But with, having one possession games, it's much better to have the better quarterback like Aaron Rodgers compared to the other people. They also had some close games this past season as well. It's very interesting. I feel like, the Packers have been really dominant the past 2 years, but you also kind of got to look at, there are also a few games where they were very close to losing, and if they did not have Aaron Rodgers or somebody of his caliber, they probably would have ended up losing. But, I had the Packers 10-7. Would not be surprised if they ended up winning the NFC North. But I, as of right now, I have the Vikings winning the division. I know it's a very unpopular opinion, going 11-6.
Yeah, I don't see it. I mean, only time will tell. But the Vikings, to me, they're a week-by-week team. You can't really project the entirety of their season. 11-6 is, it's wishful thinking, and more power to you. But I don't see it. I see the Vikings more as an 8-win team. Maybe 9. At best. I think you give them 9 wins, or maybe even 10. But Green Bay, I think that, considering the fact that they have maintained, a large number of players that have that chemistry with Rodgers, I think that the Packers are going to come up top. I think that they're not going to be dethroned, especially by the Vikings. Yeah, they're the closest threats to the Packers, but Aaron Rodgers has proved time in, time again, he is the best quarterback in the league, and when he's on your team, your chances of winning increase. And at the end of the day, he has had his encounters with Mike Zimmer, and he knows what Zimmer's going to throw at him. He knows that he's very good at disguising coverage, and Rodgers is not going to bite. And I believe that the Packers are a run-first team now. I've had a hard time saying that they aren't. I believe that they were pass first. But, when you have Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon, why wouldn't you establish the run game first and open up the passing game for Aaron Rodgers? That is most logical game plan going into any game, let alone Minnesota, because their defense is out of this world. I give proper props due. I mean, the Minnesota Vikings have a great defense. I'm not poo-pooing that. I just have to say that, Green Bay's defense did take a step back. You have question marks with Kevin King and the Smith brothers, and I'm a big fan of Amos. I believe Amos is a huge, huge part of our secondary. We got to see how Jair Alexander does. I believe that Jair, he has potential to be a top 5 corner in this league. But I think that the Packers, at the end of the day, are the team to beat. So until they are beat, then what do I have to say to that? I mean, lost words at this point. I just think the Packers are the team to beat. If you can't beat them, then tough.
Yeah, like I was saying, I had the Vikings, winning the division. I wouldn't be shocked if the Packers did, because you look at the quarterback play of this division. That's you look at the rosters and everything. I feel like some position groups they're comparable, but the Rogers just compared to Kirk Cousins and Jared Goff and Justin Fields. That's the biggest huge gap when it comes to position groups in this division. Not only is the best quarterback in the division and the NFC, but as of right now, the NFL. It's just very interesting to me with this division. I think it's a little closer than people think, but the Packers, it's just very interesting. I feel like losing Corey Linsley is just a much bigger departure than people think. I think that's really might end up hurting them a little bit, but it's interesting because you look at that side of the fact for the Packers, but then you also look at Rodgers is capable of elevating talent, like I mentioned, with Robert Tonyan. Familiarity with Randall Cobb, brings in Amari Rogers from Clemson. Their defense did take a slight step back, but then look at the Vikings defense. I think they're going to have a major upgrade, and if their offense is comparable to last season in Minnesota, I think it's going to be close to see who ends up winning the division. With the Vikings, though, I just think it has to be Kirk Cousins' consistency, because if Kirk Cousins is inconsistent, and if he does not perform like he did last season, I mean, obviously it's going to be the Packers winning. But I wouldn't be surprised if Cousins has a similar season compared to last year, because that was Justin Jefferson's rookie season. Adam Thielen was phenomenal. Dalvin Cook was phenomenal. They're bringing, arguably a better offensive line than last season. But it's very interesting with the Vikings and the Packers. Clearly, the two best teams in the division. The other teams like the Lions and the Bears are going to suck this year. Wouldn't be surprised if either one of those teams had 4 wins or 5 wins or less. But Tony, any kind of final thoughts on these NFC North division preview?
Absolutely, and I appreciate you for having me on, and I'm interested to see how it unfolds. I mean, obviously I'm biased a little bit. Obviously, I'm a big Green Bay Packer fan, and I just don't see anyone beating the Packers, honestly, especially with that home field advantage in Lambeau. But I respectfully disagree with you, but it's always good to see the perspective of both sides. So, thank you for having me on, man.
Oh yeah, for sure. Always trying to get perspective from other teams, because I have lots. For the most of the time, when I have guests, it's interesting. When I first kind of started, I have lots of, Bengals fans. And I try to, I'm a huge Bengals fan myself, try to get different perspective. Now I've had, like yourself, a big Packers fan, Cowboys, Chargers. There's just tons of different fans of different. It's always kind of cool to see their perspectives on their own individual team and teams in their division themselves. This was a lot of fun, talking about the NFC North Divisional preview. So, Tony, can you kind of tell some of the listeners so they can follow you on social media?
Yeah, so my sports page is Tony Gazza TV on Instagram. My main account is, I believe, Antonio W. Gazza on Instagram, and my YouTube is Tony GTV. But shout out to Jordan. I've been seeing the amazing work that he's been putting out. If you haven't already, check out his interview with Jason Campbell. That is a tremendous piece. And I saw that you met Sergeant Slaughter. That's tremendous. I think that was awesome. But yeah, man, I just keep up the great work, and we definitely notice you out there, man.
Yeah, I really, really appreciate it. Thanks for that. You're allowed on the show, anytime, stuff like that. Really glad you're able to take time of your day to join, talk about the NFC North Divisional preview. That really about does it for this episode. Make sure to go follow Tony on the links below, and I'll leave a description on his Instagram and his YouTube and everything like that. Thank you all so much for listening. Make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. I would really, really appreciate it, and I will see you all next time on the Sports Behind Show.